what is the breadth of your services? Like, what are the type of services that you offer?
A big part of it is tax planning, but CPAs in their tax planning, they typically are looking in the past. The investment planning, the retirement planning, the life insurance planning for doctors, disability insurance, the estate plan, making sure that their home life and or their home and auto insurance is correct. You have to do the whole group of work, the whole scope of work.
So it sounds like you also need a complete team. So what does the complete team look like?
CPA, an attorney. We can also expand things like an auto and home, like a casualty, property and casualty insurance agent that does the auto and home insurance. Could that mean a mortgage banker? Could that mean a lender? I'm working with a couple of business owners right now that are looking for financing. I like to tell my clients, listen, if you have an issue with your finances, call me. And if I don't know an expert, I'll certainly find you an expert, but chances are I know somebody that can already help you.
What are some of the things that you advise them to do if they start late in this whole game of saving money for retirement?
Not only do they feel like they're starting late, but they feel like they're starting late and then they're behind. The biggest thing that I do is say, even though you feel like you're starting late, let's get started.
Are there any hard and fast rules like that you advise your clients?
You never want to run out of money before you run out of breath. I also say, from a retirement plan perspective, that no retirement plan is complete without some plan for long-term care. Always going to keep an eye on that shadow tax, that stealth tax that lives, and making sure that we can minimize that bite.
Is there such thing as being too young to go see a financial planner?
No, get saving, start saving. Because if you can start saving in your 20s and build those saving habits, that can be a massive, massive difference maker. I'm not super fond of the philosophy of you have to be worth a certain amount before you're going to get great advice. That takes the human out of it. You're looking at somebody like they're a dollar sign. If someone wants my help and they seek it out, I'm going to give them their help.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is Eric Mangold. Eric is the founder of Argosy Wealth Management, and he brings with him 20 years of financial services experience. Eric, welcome to the show.
Gabe, thank you very much for having me.
Eric, let's start way back at the beginning. What prompted you to get into this space, and what prompted you to get into wealth management in particular?
I think it's really started in college, and two things really started happening then. One was my dad, started getting very sick. He had a degenerative disease in his back, had multiple surgeries, and worked for AT&T, well, Bell Telephone, then AT&T, and T, and all the iterations of therefore. And they really needed somebody to talk to. And at the time, you could talk to an accountant, right? But an accountant really just wants to do taxes. You could talk to an insurance agent, but an insurance agent just wants to sell you a policy. You can talk to an investment guy, or at the time, a stock person who just wanted to sell you 100 shares of the hottest stock. There was no real financial planner. There was no strategic person that you could talk to tie all those pieces together, because all those pieces do make a kind of the puzzle piece come together of a financial plan, whether it's insurance, investments, taxes, right? They all come together. But there was nobody that had all those pieces, had all those areas of expertise. So that was the first thing I noticed. And the second thing is I was in college at the time, and at college they started a new curriculum called personal finance. And there was only about 8 of us in there. And they were actually still evolving the curriculum. So they told us one of the things that they wanted us to do was go find some internships. So I interned with a financial advisor, and it was awesome. It was really awesome. I was lucky enough to sit in on some meetings that he had with his clients. And I was like, wait a second, you have people that really need a lot of help. They're coming to you for questions about their finances. You're helping them, and you're making a living by doing this. And he's like, yeah, I guess I really think we're helping change people's lives. So that's when it started.
On your website, you mentioned that a lot of your clients are in the medical profession. How did you end up in that space, why medical professionals and why is it different? What kind of advice do you give to medical professionals that would be any different to any other profession?
Yeah, I think with medical professionals, when people start being when you're a new financial advisor, what the advice that you're given, advice that you're given is work with lawyers, doctors, and athletes. So okay, I'm just going to go call LeBron James and see if he'd like to be a client, right? Um, so I was working on Wall Street at the time, or working with a lot of Wall Streeters at the time. So that's the really where I started my financial planning practices, working with those folks. And then fast forward about 5 or 6 years, I was introduced to a neurosurgeon by a friend of mine who's not a doctor. And he said, I need you to talk to a buddy of mine. He's having a lot of issues with his finances and he doesn't feel like he's getting real solid advice. I said, okay, let's have a chat. So I go in, guy is super friendly, amazingly intelligent, and very, very bright. And the first thing he asked me was about his 401k. And he said, Eric, holds up a statement, when do I have to pay this back? And I said, wait, come again? When do you have to pay what back? He's like, this 401k thing. He's like, I have to pay this back at some point, don't I? And I said, no, that's your retirement money that's been coming out of your paycheck every single week to fund your own retirement. That's your money. You don't pay that back. Wow. And we're talking about not a dumb guy, a guy that was opening people's heads to operate on their brain to get the cancer out. Amazingly brilliant guy, but just didn't have the acumen for money. So I did a lot of work with him on his insurance, which was completely not as neat, not as robust as it needed to be. Did the college funding for his kids, and also we did some things with with partners of mine for his home and auto insurance, which was completely leaving him vulnerable. Redid his life insurance, redid his investments, and the day that I was going to work with him or to kind of implement everything, and this is like a little bit before all the electronic signatures were available. He said, "Listen, Nick, I'm going away for 3 weeks. I'm going on a conference for a week, and then I'm going on a vacation for 2 weeks with my family." And I was like, "Listen, Doc, the documents that I have are kind of a shelf life to them, so I just prepared them. Like, I just need to sign. This just implements everything that we talked about." He's like, "Yeah, I get it. I get it." I said, "Well, can I just come in tomorrow and just grab you for 90 seconds?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. I'm in the OR tomorrow." So I said, "Listen," I go, "What time do you get in the OR?" And he's like, "I'll be in there at 6:30." I'm like, "Great. If I show up at 6:15, I literally need you at night for 90 seconds." And he said, "Sure. I'll talk to my surgical coordinator, get you in, no problem." So that next morning, I walk in and I'm the only bald dude in a suit carrying a briefcase. And I walk in and he's like, "Okay, Eric, what do you need?" And I'm like, "Sign here, here, here. These are the things we talked about." And his surgical team is looking at me. And of course, they're all in scrubs, ready to go and start their day of helping their patients. And I'm like, "Who's that guy?" And and he's like, "Oh man, you guys got to talk to Eric." He's like, he's redone my entire financial plan, my retirement plan, my insurance, the college plans for my kids. Like, he's like, "You guys got to talk to this guy." So I always call it the greatest meeting that anyone could possibly ever had, because I walked in about 90 seconds, I walked out with 9 referrals.
That's
And so,
exactly that's like the best possible advertisement you could have ever done, right?
right. It's fantastic. Like, can I show up to the OR every day? Um, so fast forward a couple years, and that neurosurgeon has become is a client, but also a friend of mine. And I said, thinking of starting to specialize with working with medical professionals, healthcare professionals. What do you think about that? And before I could finish the statement, he said, "How can I help?" So he's been great with introducing me to some of the groups that he's a part of. He's a part of our neurological association. He's part of a surgeons group, and also he's helped. I do a lot of seminars at his facility, and it's expanded. It's not just been just doctors, but physicians assistants, LPN. I mean, a lot of these folks, they just don't get the time to talk about this, and they're really, really underserved. It's amazing. They're just never taught this stuff.
Earlier you mentioned about like insurance and like home insurance, life insurance, and I probably malpractice insurance as well. And I always thought that was maybe outside the scope of like financial planning or financial services. When people mention financial planning, usually people talk about 401ks or retirement or IRAs, that kind of thing. Maybe give us a quick outline. What is the breadth of your services? Like, what are the type of services that you offer?
So I always I refer back to a menu that I put together that has about 15, actually it's about now it's about 18 wealth management issues that surveys have shown impact most Americans. I won't list out all 18, but when people think financial advisor game, I think you're right. Most people think this person's going to help me with my investments. But it's a lot, and that's a part of it. It absolutely is a part of it. But it's also a big part of it is tax planning, not tax preparation. Tax preparation is what a CPA does, and CPAs are vital, absolutely vital. But CPAs in their tax planning, they typically are looking in the past. What did we do last year, and how can I save money on last year's return? Tax planning is looking how we can save you a dollar in taxes today, tomorrow, and in the future. So that's a big part of what we do. The investment planning, the retirement planning, the life insurance planning for doctors, disability insurance. I mean, for a lot of the physicians, their livelihood is in their skills and their hands, being able to stand, being able to perform with their hands. If they can't do that because they're hurt or sick, they don't want their income cut off. So disability insurance is a big piece of that. The estate plan, making sure that their home life and or their home and auto insurance is correct. Now, some of these things, like the estate plan, I'm not an attorney. I read wills pretty frequently, but I'm not an attorney. So I have a great ecosystem of folks that I refer clients out to that are experts in areas where I may not be, like a home and auto insurance person. I don't do that kind of insurance, but you have to do the whole group of work, the whole scope of work. Because let's say that I do a phenomenal job managing someone's investments, but their auto insurance isn't right. And they get into an accident and they get sued and they don't have enough coverage. And so after that amount of coverage the auto insurance has, it goes into their personal investments. Well, it's great. I gave them a 8, 9, 10% rate of return, whatever it was. But if it all can be taken away because that wasn't addressed, what kind of job did I do? So you have to do the complete job. I think if you're going to call yourself a financial planner, you have to do the complete job and making sure one risk doesn't get in, but also you're addressing everything. And then listen, if that means that I refer somebody out to someone that's an expert, then that's what that means. Even if it helps, even if I get compensated on it or not. I don't get compensated from a trust and estate attorney if I send someone to get their wills done, but I want to know that trust and estate attorney is somebody that I can trust to do a great job for them.
So it sounds like you also need a complete team. So what does the complete team look like? You have a financial advisor, you mentioned lawyer, accountant, what else?
Yeah, so financial advisor, which would be somebody like me, but yeah, a CPA, an attorney, and that attorney can usually is going to be an estate attorney, but for the business owners that I work with, business owner, someone that can focus on the business, what's the structure of their business? Is it the right structure for the business? And sometimes a CPA can help with that too. Um, we can also expand things like an auto and home, like casualty, property and casualty insurance agent that does the auto and home insurance. um, that's a vital piece of things, especially for folks that have younger drivers. Making sure that they have enough coverage for that younger driver. So, God forbid they get into an accident, everything is protected. Their assets are protected. Could that mean a mortgage banker? Could that mean a lender? I'm working with a couple of business owners right now that are looking for financing. That's not something we are doing, but I'm introducing them to people on the banking side, the private banking side, that can help them potentially find people that can finance their business, which is really like they're you see sometimes with the business owner, their dreams of this is the product that they've launched. This is their baby and they want to see it grow and expand. Sometimes they need financing for that. So that's another person of the ecosystem. I like to tell my clients, listen, if you have an issue with your finances, call me. And if I don't know an expert, I'll certainly find you an expert, but chances are I know somebody that can already help you.
Eric, a lot of medical professionals don't really start their retirement savings until later in life because they're stuck in medical school, or right even after medical school, they might be a while before they're doing residency or something else, and they don't earn a lot of money, so they have a hard time saving. They might have a lot of loans to pay back. What are some of the things that you advise them to do if they start late in this whole game of saving money for retirement?
Great point. And that's a real tough problem with them because not only do they feel like they're starting late, but they feel like they're starting late and then they're behind. And The other thing is that with all of the work that I've done with healthcare professionals is that they're never taught financial wellness. They're not taught it in undergrad. They're not taught it in med school, residency, their fellowships, and then they start in their practice and they're focused on patient outcomes, making sure their patients are getting better. They don't get the financial wellness treatment. They don't get the information that they need for their own finances. And it really is a compound effect because you compound that on top of this is the fact that and books have been written about this, surveys have been done about this. Physicians feel that money is the ultimate taboo topic. They really don't like talking about it. I have a client who's a psychiatrist and she's brilliant and super, super funny. And when we start talking about things that she's doing in her finances, she's like, Eric, stop, let me stop you there. And I was like, why do you, why are you stopping me? She goes, do you realize that I would rather have my eyeballs tattooed than talk about my finances? And I was like, I go, but you're seriously one of the smartest people I've ever met. She goes, very well could be the case. I hate talking about money. So you have the fact that doctors don't like talking about money, that they've never been given the guidance about how to grow their wealth and protect their wealth. And they feel they're starting late. I mean, it's the three-pronged approach of just deadly failure. So the biggest thing that I do is say, even though you feel like you're starting late, let's get started. Because if you always feel like you're starting late, sometimes you just get into analysis paralysis. You never start. And then it's 5 years later and 10 years later, and you still haven't done anything. So we just get them pushed away from the docks is one of the biggest things that we do. And that could mean getting them saving, getting them investing, getting them protected. Could mean a lot of different things, but getting them away from the docks, pushing them away from the docks and putting their own plan in place.
Tax planning, that's one thing that you touched up on earlier, and it's something that often gets missed, right? A lot of people just file their paperwork. The accountant doesn't even ask a question. Just, okay, here you go. Just pay this amount. You're good. What does tax planning actually look like? And maybe give us some examples of what it can achieve.
So there's been a few sayings that if you are growing your wealth, but not paying attention to taxes, you're gonna lose. Okay, because taxes, the way the tax system is now, is the tax system will take a bite from your investments. But how does it do that? So, and how can you prepare and how can you plan for it? So, over time, we have things that there's a tax burden that's embedded in someone's investments, but they don't really feel like it is. And we can call it a shadow tax or a stealth tax because they don't feel it, but it's really there. They don't see it, but it's really there. So over the course of time, we have particular investment strategies that can help a portfolio grow, but also manage taxes. And over the course of a relationship with a client, because I mean, financial advising is a long-term relationship. I mean, that's the beauty of one of the beauties of what I do is that I get to see the before and after pictures, and I get to hear all the great things my clients are doing, and then they retire and they're happy in retirement. Like that just makes me feel like I'm doing great work. But back to the tax component, over the course of a relationship, 15, 20 years, we can be saving our clients hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes that not only do they get to keep, but that gets to grow too. So if people aren't paying attention to their taxes when they're doing their investments, it can be a wake up call when they see how much money that they're paying in taxes and how much money they could have avoided paying in taxes.
That sounds like quite a claim when you say hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. I imagine people's eyes kind of, open up a little bit. Can you give us any kind of a hint as to what you might do differently to achieve that? I mean, are you using like a complicated trust structure or LLCs? Like what are
So
you
there's a
doing to
couple
achieve
things
that?
we're
Yeah.
doing. One of the things that we're doing right now is we're doing a strategy called direct indexing with tax loss harvesting. So very simply, direct indexing. People think, okay, if I'm going to buy the S&P 500, I'm going to buy an ETF or a mutual fund that is comprised of all 500 members of the S&P 500. The reason is because if you wanted to buy all 500 members of the S&P 500, it would be time consuming, it would be inefficient, and it'll be pretty expensive. And you need some discipline to make sure that if a company gets added or taken away from the S&P 500, you got to make that adjustment. But the strategy that we have and the technology that we're employing is that we're going to be buying each individual member of the S&P 500 in an efficient way using our technology. And also implementing a tax loss harvesting strategy. So what is tax loss harvesting? Tax loss harvesting, let's say we're using gains in one area of the portfolio and losses in another area of their portfolio to cancel each other out. A pretty simple example, let's say we have Coke and Pepsi inside of the portfolio, and Coke is up 9% on the year, and maybe Pepsi is down 2% on the year. Well, we'll take that 2% loss that Pepsi has and offset it against that 9% growth or 9% return that Coke has. So then only Coke has only grown by 7%. It's a little bit of an oversimplification, but in that system, in that strategy, there are taxes that are being generated, and then we're able to save that client money in taxes. And it is a bold claim to save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes. But we've run a couple of case studies. And when we've done the case studies and we've done the analysis, it over a 15-year period of time, a 20-year period of time, and more, it can get into seven figures and higher than that in the money that we're saving in taxes. The clients are able to keep.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you are actively always looking for an opportunity to sell a stock that is down, right? So that you can have a capital gain somewhere else, and that loss will cancel the capital gain, and that's capital gain you don't necessarily have to pay later on.
Yep. And we have one of our investment partners is the firm that's running this strategy. And what they're able to do is consistently, well, they have been able to do consistently. Obviously, past performance is no guarantee of future results, but what they have been able to do consistently is generate a portfolio that is outperforming the index, the S&P 500, while they're also saving taxes. So the after tax performance has been significantly higher than just the pre-tax performance. And again, that's where a lot of the beauty resides, because again, if someone's keeping a dollar and not sending it to the IRS, they're keeping that dollar in their portfolio, allowing that dollar to grow along with their other dollars. So there's that compounding effect for that dollar too.
How long does it take to set all this up? Because it sounds, on the one hand, it sounds complicated and in depth, not only about that investment, but about everything. You talked about insurance and like the 401ks, the IRAs, and this kind of tax planning, estate planning. When you first start working with a client, like you mentioned, that gentleman who's a brain surgeon, how long does it take before you really have an understanding of their financial picture, their outlook, their plans, their retirement goals, and you work out the system and you get everything in place?
To understand our clients, that's usually pretty quick, because well, there's two components of two pieces of data. We want the hard data, which is what are their assets, what are their investments, what do their retirement accounts look like, what are their liabilities, what do they owe on things, what's their net worth, what are they saving, those types of things. That's pretty easy to get and analyze. We want to understand the soft data too. What do they want out of life? Do they want that second home? Do they want the boat? Do they want the vacation home down in Florida? Do they want to travel the world? Do they want to pay for college for their kids? Charity, philanthropic endeavors. What are they really looking to accomplish? Okay, that's the soft data. And that's always evolving, but it's usually the second meeting that we're gathering all that data. And then I say we always work at a client's pace, because like for that one neurosurgeon, there was a lot of things to do. Now he wanted to move quickly, but we also didn't want to overwhelm him. And I don't want to overwhelm anyone, because then they don't take action. The steps that we have in place to improve somebody's financial wellness, however we're doing that, whether it's their investments, insurance, or a combination of everything, I want to make it digestible. Do we take it one step at a time? Let's hammer out this one step. Do we understand what we're doing here and accomplishing? Okay, great. That's now taken care of. Let's move to the second step. Some clients want to take two or three steps at once. Some clients want to, kind of drink from the fire hose and do it all at once. So it can take a few weeks. It can take a few months, depending upon really the speed of the pace the client wants to go.
Are there any hard and fast rules that you live by? For example, some people say, in retirement, stick to the 4% rule, don't take out more than that. When you're saving money in your 20s, 30s, people say use the 50, 30, 20 budget. Are there any hard and fast rules like that you advise your clients?
When it comes to retirement, some of the hard and fast rules that I have is you never want to run out of money before you run out of breath. So every single retirement plan we make is, never a good strategy, right? Every retirement plan, every retirement income strategy that we have ensures our clients are never going to run out of money. So that's one component of it. I also say from a retirement plan perspective that no retirement plan is complete without some plan for long-term care. It's no secret that Americans we're living longer. We're living longer, and that doesn't mean we're living healthier, it just means we're living longer. Well, more and more people are going to need some form of long-term care during their lifetime. So, what is the plan? Is it to self-insure? Okay, what does that look like? Is it to pass the risk to an insurance carrier via a policy? What does that look like? So, or is it a little bit of both? What does that look like? So, no retirement plan is complete without long-term care. And also, we want to make sure that from a retirement plan, we want to make sure that we have assets that are at least keeping in pace with inflation, if not outpacing inflation. And then, of course, the hard and fast rule is always going to keep an eye on that shadow tax, that stealth tax that lives, and making sure that we can minimize that bite.
What does the future of your industry look like? I know there's been a lot of innovation in the field. There's some robo investors. I've heard of some software solutions that automatically do the tax loss harvesting you mentioned. There's of course AI now that can
Mm.
just ingest a lot of information and jump to some pretty good conclusions and insights into someone's data or financial health. Where is your industry going, and what does the future look like?
I think it's really exciting for a lot of different ways. I mean, one, we always talk about the great wealth transfer, which is baby boomers retiring and transferring their wealth to their kids that are in their 40s and 50s. And that's exciting. Also, from financial advisory standpoint, you being a financial advisor, it's not easy. I mean, the failure rate for most advisors in the first 2 years is like 85, 86%. So eight out of 10 advisors that start are not in the business 2 years after that. So the conundrum is there's a lot of advisors out there that are getting older. So who are the succeeding advisors? Who are they passing their clients and their clients' children to? So that's exciting. And then of course the technological advances are exciting too with AI. I don't really view a lot of the robo advisors or platforms of that nature as competition. Sometimes people really want to have really want to have that type of solution. But from what I do is so personal. You know, one of my clients that's been with me the longest. I mean, I was at a funeral. I was at the funeral for a husband. I mean, it was we were, and I wasn't there. I was there as an advisor and a friend because I felt like that was the right place for me to be. But it's these relationships are deeply, deeply personal. When I'm talking about someone about funding college for their kids, that's a big deal. I'm talking to clients about funding college for their grandkids. That's a big deal. When I'm talking about their estate plan, I have a client that has a lot of philanthropic endeavors, and watching him and his wife give money to a specific school so that one department of that school can grow because that's where he graduated from. That's special. Robo-advisor will never be able to do that. There's still so much of a personal touch with what I do. So it's exciting because I think the technology can make us better, like the tax loss harvesting strategies. The technology can make us better, but it's exciting because we still are going to be using our personal touch and really talking to people. I mean, a great example during COVID, when COVID was raging, I was talking to some of my clients on a weekly basis. You remember the markets weren't exactly going up during when COVID was raging. And so people were worried. They were worried about the virus, and they were worried about their portfolios. So some of my clients needed to hear from me, and they needed to hear from me sometimes on a weekly basis. Now I had some clients that said, "Eric, listen, you don't have to call me every week. I get it. You talked me off the ledge already." He's like, "Let's talk every month," kind of thing. But a robo advisor is never going to have that personal touch of listen. This is a lot. This is some of the things that we're handling right now. And one of the big parts of what I need to do is even though there's a lot of personal touch, I have to make investment and decisions on someone's financial plan unemotionally. I have to factor that out. There's a lot of emotion because I want my clients to succeed and reach their financial goals. But in order to do that, I have to remove the emotion. I have to remove the emotion because if you put emotion into decision making, chances are you're not going to make the best decision.
How do you handle that discussion when, let's say, the markets go through a crash, once every 10 years or so, and all of a sudden the S&P 500 is down 10% month on month, and some of your clients are panicking, saying, "Oh my God, my entire retirement plans are in disarray." What do you tell them? How do you comfort them?
So it depends upon where they are in life, and are they just getting ready to retire, or are they in their 20s or 30s? But I always say the retirement plan needs to be nimble, and we also have to understand how much risk someone wants to take and needs to take, and understand that if somebody's in their 20s and 30s, yeah, they're probably going to be taking more risk than somebody that's in their 60s or 70s. But that for those people that are in their 20s or 30s, even 40s, they probably still have a longer runway to retirement. So they can handle and absorb some of the ups and the downs that we're going to see in the market. It's funny, they talked about, the financial crisis of 2008, COVID, the internet boom. They talked about all these black swan events that only happen every 50 years. Well, it seems like we had three pretty big black swan events just in like 20 years. So the plan's got to be nimble. It's got to be able to absorb some of the ups and downs. But then also, where is somebody in life? If somebody is in the later stages of life in their 70s and 80s and they're retired and they're living off their retirement investments, we have to make sure that we've insulated them as much as we can from a downturn in the markets.
How young should people go and seek you out? I mean, I know that a lot of your clients are in the medical profession, so maybe you first start working with them when they're in their 30s kind of thing. But I mean, is there such thing as being too young to go see a financial planner?
No, never such a thing as too young. Now now I'm starting to work with some of my clients' kids that are in their 20s and just getting out of college. So what for those folks, that advice is I'm helping them get started up on their own with their company's 401k. A lot of the advice is get saving, start saving, because if you can start saving in your 20s and build those saving habits, that can be a massive, massive difference maker. Also, what I'm doing for a lot of clients that are younger is steering them from pitfalls, steering them from getting saddled with a ton of debt, making bad financial decisions. A lot of times I'm acting as like that second set of ears, be like, "Hey, listen, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. What do you think?" And again, unemotionally and unbiased, I'm going to give them that advice. And then as they grow, then there's going to be more and more things to do for them. One of the things that I think my industry doesn't do well, I'm not a fan of how it does it, is if some investment advisors, some financial advisors will say, okay, if you want to work with me, you have to have $1 million of investments to hand over to me day one. Well, I work with a lot, Gabe, I work with a lot of residents that don't have that kind of money. But some of those residents have blossomed and turned into amazing clients for me that do have that kind of money now. They just didn't when they first met me. So I always say I work with medical professionals from residency through retirement. But I'm not super fond of the philosophy of you have to be worth a certain amount before you're going to get great advice. That takes the human out of it. You're looking at somebody like they're a dollar sign, and I'm just not a fan of that. So if someone wants my help and they seek it out, I'm going to give them their help. There might be times where I say, listen, I don't think I'm right for you at this particular time, but talk to me next year or the year after. But I never want to look at somebody as a dollar sign before I'm going to start giving them advice.
Eric, where can people reach out to you to learn more and to reach out, like find you, etc., website, socials, etc.?
Best place is to go to my website. It's my first letter and last name, emangold, emangold.com. And it's got a lot of information, got a lot of videos, ebooks, a lot of information that's free to download and with no obligation, of course. And also, if someone wants to get in touch with me, they can do so through my website.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Eric. I'll put those into the show notes. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Gabe, thank you very much for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seat Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.